I'm obsessed with the process. I genuinely love entrepreneurship so much that I weirdly like to lose. And I like to lose because I respect the game more than the stuff that the game can buy for me. So yeah, do I think, but it's interesting when you asked about, like the thing that I hear there is, I think entrepreneurship became cool and I'm the beneficiary of that. But I think 20 years ago, a lot of the people in the audience would have not been entrepreneurs, but I would have been. And I don't say that as a razz or a dig to the audience. I just think that what I really want for everyone in the audience is not to be an entrepreneur. And I do have fear that some of the people in the audience are doing the entrepreneur thing because it's cool, because it looks good on paper, it's cool to say you are. And why I fear that is not because they won't be successful, though that stinks and it stinks to lose. It's that if you're not an entrepreneur, like really actually, like a purebred, losing in front of your family and relatives will probably be scary, because really one of the telltale signs of a true entrepreneur is their incredible capacity to fail, at least in the micro. And so, I think I do look, one of the biggest reasons I never show, I fly private sometimes, my time's valuable. But the reason I desperately never want to show that is because I don't understand the glamorization of jewelry or cars or flights, because I don't think that is the healthy part of the game. I actually think when entrepreneurs post that stuff, I don't think that's that's aspirational. I really don't. I actually think if you look carefully, it's making a lot of people in this audience and in the world feel bad about themselves, right? They see all these people and they FOMO, it triggers their insecurity. And so I do worry about, as such a capitalist, I do worry about the over-capitalization of the content. But that's always been the case. Long before social media, people bought Mercedes and Chanel bags and moved to 90210 just for the validation. There are people in the world, you know this, who send their kids to certain schools for their own self-worth. And I worry about that. I don't like that. I think you should be doing things for yourself and your family out of the process, not the stuff. Because I think you'll be happier mentally and you won't burn out. And I think that's important. When I tell you that I might wake up one day and stop everything and not even think twice, and I'll make the video and be like, yo, America, the world, I'm not burnt out. I just wanna do this. And maybe like in 2012 to 14 when I made no content, maybe 2022 to 24, I'll be out and maybe I come back like a phoenix. But right now, I want a garage sale full time, or I want to be a stay-at-home dad, or I'm gonna go fully all in on, I've been telling you, well, guess what? I bought Charleston Chew, and I need every piece of my energy to turn Charleston Chew into the #1 candy and chocolate drink and chocolate franchise in the world. So we'll probably be documenting it. D-Rock's still here. We'll probably be documenting it for the documentary in 2 years, but I really can't even take a second to do what I actually do, which is put out this content, and I'm gonna go head down.
But it's like a huge mind fuck, because I'm happy doing it, but at the same time, I'm exhausted.
Where was the green circle a year ago? Show me. Draw it.
Probably here.
So you're happier.
This is the most happy? Oh.
I'm sorry, no, I apologize, you're right.
Probably here.
A year ago?
Yes.
So you're happier.
But I've gained a lot of exposure.
So you're happier?
Yes. Since last year, yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yes.
Why? Because you're getting bigger.
Yeah, I'm getting bigger, more followers. People seek me out for more advice.
Can I ask you, how many days a week are you doing 8 p.m. to 2 in the morning?
5, 6.
So make it 3. Let me promise you one thing.
The source of income with this is eBay.
Bro, burning out's a bad idea. Like the way you're talking right now, I've never talked ever once.
Is it weird that I'm happy but exhausted?
No, I think there's a lot of that. But I think you could be happier by being less exhausted.
Okay.
And I don't think you should beat yourself up.
I just feel like if I skip a day, it's 10 more steps I gotta accomplish the next day. That's never gonna get done.
You've put yourself in a bad framework. You want a liberating feeling from the guy that knows and watches,
Yeah.
I think if you didn't do anything for 6 months, not much would happen.
Okay.
I'm being dead fucking serious with
There's
you.
2,000 followers. Who gives a shit? Yeah. Yeah.
Let me say it one more time slowly, because I gotta go. I think if you do nothing for 6 months, very little will happen. It's kind of like working out. Actually, I'm like quite heavier than I've been for a little bit because just a lot going on and just haven't been as tight. And I feel fine with it. I'm not pumped. I'd like to be 10 pounds lighter. 5 years I did it so hard. Last 6 months, not as hard. Not ideal, but not beating myself up because I know that if and when I decide to go hard again, that it will, and I don't feel like I wasted my that's where you're going. I'm glad I did those 5 years, because if I didn't do those 5 years, I'd be 213 pounds and really fucked up. So I get all the benefits of those 5 years, just like you get all the benefits of this. The first thing I would do is, if you were my brother, I'd be like, bro, just do me a favor, 3 days a week. Just that will be so invigorating. I actually would argue that you'll get more done in those 3 days than you're getting in your 5 right now, because you're on tilt.
It's every night till 2. And it's just, yeah, I mean.
You're stuck in a manifestation and a theory.
That I have to do.
Yeah, in a theory, and a wrong theory.
Less is more.
It could be, but what you're doing is not sustainable by the way you're communicating. So what are you gonna do? Just
and
wait.
If I do this for the next 15 years, I'm still never gonna get all the shit that I have to get done.
I want to change the
There goes
world.
my 15 years of life.
Only thing I want to do is change the world and make it more positive.
Right.
I won't get to boiling the ocean. I want to get to 7.7 billion people.
Right.
It's unlikely, but I'm not crippled by that.
Right.
I love my process. You don't love your process right now. That's why you're
Such a grind. and
you're
such a
vulnerable,
grind.
because you don't love your process. Got it?
Yeah.
3 days a week. And so I'm incredibly grateful, because I think a lot of us in this audience, to succeed with emotional intelligence, we either have to get very fortunate and get the luck of the draw of DNA and parenting, or we have to put in a lot of work in meditation, therapy, and living life. And so for me, a lot of times people say, a lot of people that live the life that I lived, which is worked a lot and worked really hard and worked hard, smart, and people will throw lucky at them, right? They got lucky. And a lot of people that in the audience and their parents and me that have put in the work, you get triggered, right? You're like, man, I worked so hard. This isn't luck. You're not working, or you don't get it. But I will say I got lucky when we talk about emotional intelligence. I did get great DNA. I have 2 siblings who have different DNA than I do. And not that mine's better or worse than theirs, it's just that I'm a default optimist. And I believe that if you're a default optimist, especially if you're built like me, where you're also grounded in reality and it's not delusion, that if you're a practical optimist, you're halfway home. And then I've also had the luxury of liking people, spending a lot of time with people, managing people since I was 14, 15. When I was 16, I was the son of the guy who owned the liquor store. And so by de facto, I was managing people at 16. And so here I am 31 years later. I have an organization with 2,000 employees. I have a very public persona, and I interact with people at scale. And life has become very obvious to me. I believe that plenty of people can make money, and plenty of people are not good at it. But there's really no correlation when it comes to joy and happiness and being content to how much money one makes. And I love entrepreneurship, and I love being a businessman, and I love being a competitor, and I love grinding and competing and tenacity and determination. But I like being happier than all those things. And I guess from my standpoint, I was self-aware at a young age. I knew myself. I was willing to be ridiculed because I had self-confidence. And for everybody in the audience, what I mean by ridiculed is, I'm 47, so when you were getting D's and F's in school in the 80s and 90s, you were gonna be a garbage man. You weren't gonna be anything. It's not the world we live in now, where entrepreneurship is a viable, if not over rock starred, capacity and occupation. When I was growing up, the word barely had any traction. And so I got used to losing early on. I was able to build very thick skin. I'm empathetic to judgment instead of crippled by it. And I think it's powerful. And honestly, I've become incredibly motivated over the last decade to talk about these things. And for the people in the audience that are aware of my content, I speak a lot about emotional stuff in the framework of marketing and tactics and business, and I'm proud of it because I think it helps people, and that feels good. When I think about gratitude, let's start there. You are not in this room if you're not winning. Back to clapping it all up. I think people have completely lost context of gratitude living in a first world country like America. Just to remind everybody, to level set where I'm going with this. The top 1% earners in this country, one of the two dominant empires in the world right now, at a very rich company. The top 1% earners in this country start at about $440,000 a year. If you make $440,000 a year, you're in the 1% in the richest country in the world. Even different than that from a business standpoint, looking around this audience, we're all of the age where some bad stuff has happened. We have lost a relative, we have lost things. When I think about why people don't build good cultures, especially when I think about this, which is you're the hunters and back home on your team are the farmers. And that framework excites me, and I think about it a lot. Just the complete and utter lack of ability to understand how much gratitude, if it actually is in you, how much that shows up with how you manage a team is huge. We lost Ford as a major client. My head person that runs all of the New York office, which is the biggest office on the Ford account, runs in, and when I tell you white as a ghost, I'm talking like Casper the Friendly Ghost, white, like whiter than that, like dead. Walks in, he's like, we lost Ford, and we're talking about 8 figures hefty. I'm on my computer, I look up at him, I'm like, okay. I'm like, let's deal with it later. He had come from all these agencies where what would have happened is complete chaos, 100 people would have been laid off, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't come because my P&L is healthy, though it is enough to absorb it. It comes because I'm incapable of letting business dictate my emotional behavior. I'm completely detached from my success. When I say 5.3 million fans, back the story he just told you, I'm not proud of that. I mean, I'm proud of it, I know I put in the work, but it's definitely not my identity. And I think, when I think about winners at this level, I always think about man, if people were just really grateful, because what I always think about, and what I said earlier, I know there was some chuckles, since I was 10, I've been on a mission to buy the New York Jets. I think about it, I strategize against it, I own an esports team and a pickleball team, and with other owners in the league, Steve Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, owns a piece of my agency, I'm in it, and I'm trying. But when I think about balancing real obnoxious ambition, compromising it, and changing your culture because you're so driven by a number, a goal, success, is actually stopping you from getting to the thing you want. I think about self-awareness a lot. The other unlock that I've seen in this scenario that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about with the CEOs that I sit on the board of, this is why I have some audacity of buying the Jets. In 2006, as I was going through building my dad's business, I decided social media was the next big thing, and I became a very early investor in 2006 in Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Uber. Back then, literally Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr were the first 3 companies I ever invested in. They were remarkable. If you don't know Tumblr, it's basically the social network that I think TikTok is now representing, the interest graph versus the social graph. It sold for $1 billion to Yahoo 10 years ago. But in self-awareness, I've had funds since, I've done well, but I haven't annihilated it. And it's because I'm not really a remarkable investor. I'm a good investor. But now I'm becoming a better investor because I've asked myself, why did I invest in those companies? I invested in them because I wasn't thinking of myself as an investor. I was thinking of myself as, this is a good company, the CEO is good, I'm gonna make money. I simplified it. I think for a lot of people in this room, as you think about doubling, tripling, quadrupling what you want, I think we struggle in lying to ourselves. At some point I'll get to my half, which is kind candor. If you ask me, why have I left enormous amounts of money on the table in my 25 years in all this success? It is completely and utterly attributable to my inability to be candorous to my team, because I don't really love negative conflict. I like to find different ways to get to the goal without telling people it directly to their face. It's something I've struggled with for 20 plus years. Only in the last 3 or 4 years, when I've been able to assess personal and professional hardships, that I've been able to really go to a self-awareness, accountable, honest place with myself, and it's completely transformed our business. In the last 4 years, my agency has doubled in size of people and tons of growth, based on me finally addressing my candor issue and not surprising people. The only thing that was fucking up my culture, and my culture is off the charts, was that I am so proud, and I challenge all of you to understand how important as a leader it is to singly be focused on eliminating fear. Period. If you want to melt this all down to the opportunity for growth, how good are you? Steve, first of all, great shirt, Steve. Steve, how good are you at eliminating fear is a direct correlation to what's gonna happen to your business with your people. The problem is, there's a lot of parents here. How many people are parents in here? Raise your hands. So a lot of you know this. The problem is when you focus on eliminating fear and you go too far, you create entitlement. And so my vulnerability was, I'm so obsessed with eliminating fear that I created a culture of entitlement. And so people thought they were better than they were because I wasn't able to tell them. And so finding the purple instead of the red and blue is a humongous passion of mine. And so I highly recommend for anybody in this room who genuinely is hungry for the growth to start thinking about self-awareness. Even some of the stuff I talked about earlier, this whole one team thing you're on in a world where you're all kind of independently playing, like you have to be self-aware of like who you are as a partner to this ecosystem. More importantly, and I mean more importantly, even though I'm sure that's incredibly important, more importantly, you have to be self-aware of the leader you are for your team. Your retention and happiness on the people that work for you has the craziest direct correlation to your growth capacity. And so I think in the business world, all these foofy feelings, especially and I'm a salesman, especially when we think about sales and hunting, I think we've grossly underestimated that the soft skills are actually the hard skills. And I know what a lot of people think when I talk about this stuff. I am not talking about wild entitlement for Gen Z who wants to work at home 5 days a week and not work and wants you to take care of everything. But I do want to remind all the people that raised their hands, we're the parents of those kids. My favorite thing that's happening in culture is having dinners and meetings with people where they're shitting on their 23-year-old kid, and then when they're done, I look at them and I'm like, you created them. You don't want your kids to be entitled? Don't give them 8th place trophies when they suck in soccer. Over 40, raise your hand. This shit where you go to school and argue with a teacher for a better grade, that's some crazy ass shit. Like we've broken way too many rules of merit. That's why, you wanna talk about why everyone's scared and sad? It's because we've scared them. We've shown all our children that the reason, like, here's a good one. If you have a child that's over 22 years old in your life right now, and you give them money in any capacity, you pay for their apartment, their Uber, their Equinox, you just give them money, I will show you a direct correlation to them being unhappy. But yet it feels counter. And this is the same thing with management, just like parenting. I don't think what's up here is so easy. Balancing being empathetic to your team and kind while you're tenaciously trying to hit numbers is a fucking tightrope. But I promise you there's a direct correlation to it. Every single person here has probably missed out on the best thing that ever could have happened to them in their lives. And the second you accept that truth, that the millions of decisions you've already made in your life have probably kept you away from the best thing that could have ever happened in your life. The love of your life, the idea of your life, the business opportunity, the money made, like all of it. Then I think you can start leaning into the human experience. I'm telling you, that's what it is. Like we don't give ourselves enough room, and it goes back to patience. Like, you know, how do you do both? By knowing you have a lot of time to do both. And as far as FOMO, you're never gonna know how it would have been anyway. Plus, the thing I always think about to make myself feel even better about the fact that I've said no to the best things that ever could have happened to me is knowing that it also would have changed the course of my life. So yes, maybe I would have said yes to going out with my friends this night, and I would have saw something and it would have led to the idea of my life. But maybe then while I was executing that idea, something bad could have happened. Maybe that would have brought me to a meeting in LA and I wasn't paying attention and a car hit me and I'd be dead right now. I think people are fascinating in their inability to understand how much of life you don't control, and that like everything is FOMO. You need to flip it. Instead of thinking of it literally, you need to think of it much bigger. Like that's happening every day. Do you understand? Like you're thinking about it as like, should I go do this project? Should I do this? You're looking at the big things. I think it's even if you left your house 5 minutes earlier tomorrow, your life would be different. It's really, really big. You know what I mean? Like I know it may sound silly, but what I think it's done for me and when I see why it works for others, it actually liberates you into not thinking that you have to make these perfect decisions. I don't think I make any good decisions. I'm being serious. Like I just think I'm making decisions to the best of my ability at that moment, and sometimes it's gonna be very good, and sometimes it's not gonna be, but you're putting too much pressure. Listen to the questions. We're just very good at putting pressure on ourselves to achieve something that's not achievable. For what? Actually, you know what? Based on the questions, and then I'll let you ask your second. I have one very good recommendation. If you can find yourself in the next year or two to have a conversation with somebody extremely elderly that is not a family member of yours, do it. Maybe you can even have like a grandparents exchange program. I really mean this. I think that the thing that I do well is my parents always told me stories as a child that when I was 3 and 4, I'd go outside and I'd hang out with 90-year-old people and like genuinely like hang out with them. And I always thought it was a funny story. And then as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, okay. Like I think I do believe in this old soul stuff, like you're attracted to certain energies. I think all I'm doing now is telling you the things that 90-year-olds know. I think you need more of that in your life. Like, you know, I think the way to attack truly having FOMO is flipping it and understanding everything is FOMO, everything's in play. You're missing out on everything all the time, which then will make you comfortable with it. You know, I've always felt that the thing that helps me with that the most is having the capacity to step away. And step away is not as literal as, you know, moving out of a house or stepping away. It doesn't mean you have to step away and go for 6 months to the mountains and come back. It means stepping away and actually creating more time for yourself to think and be around the elements that were who you were. I'll give you an example with me. When I feel like I'm like a little bit more detached from the center, I tend to go back to spending more times with my friends from high school or college, or starting to narrow in my circle. Usually the reason you're getting away from your authentic place is the human relationships around you. And they don't even have to be bad. I'll give you a great example that might be similar to yours. I realized 3.5 years ago that I was getting worse at marketing because I hired too many people from agencies. And even though I was the alpha and the CEO and dictating, their energy was starting to bleed into me. And so what did I do? I made a big to-do about it and said, I'm not as good as I used to be. Started spending more time on my content. I had the power to do this. Started to trim out some of the people that I thought were bringing too much of the tradition in a respectful, nice way. I think you have to protect your energy. You have to really, no different than a lot of us going through work, you need to figure out what in the job, what in your personal relationships, what in the content that you're consuming, what in the people that you're talking to, who can you rejigger, and how do you get into that place? You know, like it's getting back to those roots. I think it's funny how you asked the question. I would spend as much time as possible on who were you with and what were you consuming at the time that you were like the way you wish you were. One of the more interesting emails I get from people that consume my content is titled like, I'm back with you. Now that I've been doing it for a long time, I get a lot of people who say, you know, I stopped watching your content 5 years ago and I've started consuming it again 6 months ago and it's really helping me. And it's a version of what I'm talking to you about right now, which was they reset and try to think about when they were happier or when they were more what they want to be, what were they doing, what were they consuming, and who were they with? And I think that's an audit you need to consider. Does that make sense in any way? It's hard. You know, the thing that's hard for all of us is it's in the subconscious. But I think that's what I would do if I was, when I'm in a rut, I try to go back and I do funny things, like I go garage sailing. I remember one time specifically, I even worked in my dad's store for a day just to, I'm telling you, I know I notice how I asked you, does that make sense? I knew you were gonna, it's not easy what I'm saying, but I do think if you can go very literal and say, okay, I was most authentic self when I was watching these kind of videos, because you can, even though you're a different man than you were 5 years ago, 3 years ago, you can start to do that. It's something worth thinking about. The only thing that ever works is understanding, to your point, the move out, that's a Band-Aid. Get into a fight with them, that's a Band-Aid. Set them straight, that's a Band-Aid. The only thing I've ever seen really work in this game is understanding the alternative will create a worse relationship with you and your parents. Meaning, the biggest challenge kids have that love their parents or are frustrated with their parents of not accepting their journey is understanding that if they, the child, compromises and appeases the parent, that within a decade, you will have such high levels of resentment towards your parents that your relationship for the rest of your lives will be negative. And so what you're deciding, because you love your parents, is that you're willing to bare your teeth and grind it out and be inconvenienced and struggle with it in the short term for the greater good. Because in this scenario, 50% of the time it works out, and parents always then rewrite history and are very proud, and you know how it is. And even if it doesn't work out, even if the child that's on a journey does not succeed, they have put themselves in a position to not blame their parents because they gave it their full effort, and they'll never have that resentment or regret. So I think the answer to your question is, in your scenario where you feel like you don't have a lot of options and you're not gonna change their mind with words, the only way you're gonna do it is by changing their mind with actions. It's just gonna take you 10 years, this goes into patience, it's just gonna take you 10 years, and you have to, in your mind, go very high level and say, I'm willing for it to not be ideal for the next 3, 5, 10 years, because if I quit this and do what I want them to do, well, there's no outcome that's gonna be healthy.
Gary, that was telling me the story today about him and I started creating content, and they were like sitting in the rooms and filming and editing and doing these comedy shows, and their parents were like, what are you guys doing? They didn't really respect it. Until the content went viral on WhatsApp, and then the parents, somebody shared it with the parents, and then he's like, oh, that's my son who made that.
Of course. Like I said, and I saw Zach laughed, parents are incredible in rewriting history. Oh, I've always believed you can do it. You know, look, parents love their as a parent, you love your children so much that it makes you delusional. You love them so much. You love them so much that you're not rational. And parents do overvalue other parents' opinions too much. That's why I hope this generation, all of you, the biggest thing that frustrates me is kids live it. Like almost all your parents have the same frustrations with their parents, but then they're doing it to you.
So don't do it to your kids.
That's right. My hope is that this generation becomes the generation that isn't a hypocrite.
Breaks the cycle.
Breaks the cycle.
What do you think right now is the fastest way to get to your first $100,000?
By not liking the word fast. I'm really scared of that word. I think fast is dangerous, and I think it's a big part of my content. That's why I talk about patience. That's why I talk about self-awareness. The reality is, to actually answer you literally, the fastest way to get there is through self-awareness. Understanding what you're actually good at, you know? Mm-hmm. You know, like, what are you good at? You might be good at sales, you might be good at operations, you might be good at knowing everything about the Marvel universe, and that is actually your gateway to get there fastest, because it's through content or flipping stuff on eBay and stuff of that nature. So I think people try to chase trends, real estate, crypto, cannabis, AI. They're just constantly looking at these trends because they see them as things that will get them there fast. And I actually think that those are the things that are most guaranteed to not get you there. So I think if we can get the word fastest out of everyone's mouth, especially under 30, and get the word happiest and most likely in there. So ask that question again by replacing fastest with happiest and most likely. Go ahead, let's do that.
What do you think is the most likely way to get to $100,000?
In the happiest way is like, what is the question I'm most passionate about? You know, and then that answer becomes super unique. You know, of course there's macro things. If you like selling, understanding e-commerce and social media is gonna really help. Obviously, if you really know how to use Shopify and you really know how to make TikToks and Instagram and YouTube Shorts, there's a real path to 100,000 selling almost anything. This is why I'm big on passions and hobbies. I believe almost every passion and hobby. I always use Dustin and his BMX passion, or me and wrestling, or the New York Jets, or hip hop music, or drawing, or meditation, or eating clean and healthy. Like, there's so many ways to get to 100,000 by being a creator, by sharing in revenue with the platforms, by selling t-shirts about what you do, about selling tickets to a live event. Like, in 2 years working hard, making content, and I mean really making content, multiple posts a day across all the platforms around your favorite passion, wine. I did that in 2006 when it was hard. And it can be very narrow. I mean, I really do believe in 2 or 3 years, you can make $100,000 a year just talking about Ohio State football, because your podcast and your content is a top 10 because you really knew it and loved it and you were good at it. And so I always push people towards that because it will be the happiest way. If you're in love with snow globes, making $100,000 a year selling snow globes versus making $130,000 a year being a real estate agent, the path to that in the same 3-year window was extremely joyful in snow globe land and probably stressful in real estate land, but your friends told you that's the way you can make 100,000 because real estate is a really good business, right? And so I think about this a lot, and I think the word fastest is the danger, because I think fastest leads us to doing things we don't love. It leads us to doing things because we love the idea of making money to do the things we love. Think about that. You have somebody in that scenario who wants to be a real estate agent so she can afford a trip to the National Snow Globe Conference and Convention and do it bougie. She's tired driving for 9 hours to it and staying at the Holiday Inn. She wants to fly first class and stay at the Four Seasons at the National Snow Globe Convention. And that is one of the reasons that she decided to be a real estate agent versus understanding what I'm saying, which is start the Snow Globe podcast, make tons of Snow Globe content, realize that there's millions of people that collect snow globes, start an affiliate eBay business, make t-shirts, get sponsors from the top 10 snow globe companies by emailing them and telling them a year in that you actually have an audience. These are things that excite me more. The days of just posting aimlessly a video or picture are getting harder to win because everyone's doing it and it's supply and demand. So now understanding the science behind the art. What's the thumbnail look like? What's your copy look like? What time do you post? How does TikTok work differently than Instagram? I'm working on a new book called Day Trading Attention, and it goes very deep into this. It's a 301 to my book that really helped a lot of people in social called Jab, 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 Right Hook. I would call this like a PhD to that high school course, and I'm excited about it. And what it really opened my eyes to, which was in my conscious and subconscious, but as I'm going through this 6-month period, working with Raghav, who's helping me write it, it's just so clear how hard it is to be great at social in 2024. And to be great, you've gotta really know your craft. You gotta be better. And so the trend is being better. Like really understanding, should you post a reel or should you post a carousel? Posted something the other day and got immediate feedback that it was working from somebody live and this Saturday. So last Friday or Thursday, I posted a post that said, hey, have you been noticing that on Instagram, I'm posting a 2-post carousel where the first one is a meme and the second one is the video clip that you were accustomed to seeing me just post. I'm not doing that for my health. I'm doing that because I've observed that it's working. You should consider this too. Sure enough, I think the real Tarzan, that influencer, I saw him on Saturday in Utah at a conference and he came up to me, he's like, bro, you're a fucking genius, thank you. Like the first post I did with that tactic I did a lot better than I've been doing last month. Thank you. And that's the ultimate for me when I do content, that someone else takes it and runs. And so I'm doing this podcast. I'm hoping someone becomes the Snow Globe podcaster and emails me in 4 years. That thank you card, whether in DM, email, or in person, is like the most delicious feeling for me professionally right now. So that's why I continue to do this work. Anyway, nonetheless, I think the biggest tactic is to actually realize there's science, there's strategy, and this isn't just being pretty or funny or like just gimmicky anymore. Like, you've got to get great at it. And so we call it at VaynerX SOC, strategic organic content. Strategic. Why? I want everybody right now to ask themselves why they posted the last or the next post. And most of it is grounded in their subconscious that something like this used to work, and I want it to work in the algorithm. That's not good enough anymore. And this whole philosophy is grounded in something we call PACT, platforms and culture. So really understanding the platforms, how YouTube Shorts works, but then also understanding culture. Like, why are corduroy hats in? Why did Sexy Red work? You know, why? Why is everyone infatuated with Taylor Swift and Kelsey, right? It's not just two celebrities getting together. It's a little bit of like that all-American kind of like, you know, football player and the cheerleader pop star. You know what I mean? Like, understanding the deeper meaning and understanding what that means to you and understanding, is there anything for you to do about it? That's what I spend my time on.
I had never heard of Kelsey until last week.
Correct. And so the question becomes like, what is that? Like, you know, is that true love? Is that pop culture strategy? Is that, you know, for me, what that learning is for everyone is, forget about the gossip of it all, because that always gets buckery, and I always feel bad for, you know, people that have a relationship in the public eye, because that's incredibly challenging. Whether they choose to do it or not, I still have a lot of empathy towards that. What I think is, let's take that down to somebody who's a mechanic right now listening. The fuck does Taylor Swift and Kelsey have to do with me? Here's what it has to do with you, Donnie the mechanic. What you just said, this morning I see how many people now follow Kelsey that didn't a week ago. Those are people that didn't know who that was. On the flip side, for Taylor, there's a lot of football fans who now know her a little more because she had more awareness, right? Well, for Donnie the mechanic, that might mean in his local town in Detroit, he may want to go do a collaboration with a Thai restaurant where maybe they do something silly together, where they cook a meal at the auto shop, and in return, he gives everyone a free meal at that restaurant if they use a tune-up with him for a month. Because the bigger thing in the Kelsey Taylor Swift thing from a small business standpoint was cross-pollinating audiences that have no crossover leads to more business. And I didn't really know what the word candor meant at the time, but when I look back at my career at this point, it's very clear to me that that is the, you know, that was the kryptonite. That things were going super well and things went well and things are well, but the one place where I could have really taken it to the next level would have been, when I look back at my career, all of the professional relationships that could be better today, and I really believe in relationships, were predominantly employees, occasionally partners and vendors, where I wasn't capable of delivering bad news out of actually loving them and liking them. And that then led to muckery, resentment on my end, sloppy exits and firings or partnership breakups. And so over the last 3-4 years, I think I've been able to up my candor game dramatically by reframing it as kind candor. And that's really worked for me. I'm still probably a 5 out of 10, which is not really great, but boy, going from a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10 to a 5 or 6 out of 10 has been a monster jump. And I feel the effects, and that is definitely the black and white answer to if I could do it at 25 differently.
So what's the lack of candor you had at 25? And then now, if someone is underperforming at your company, what kind of candor do you have with them?
I'm just able to have the conversation. You know, hey Johnny, can I get 15 minutes with you? Hey, listen brother, I love you, you're a good dude, you do a lot of things right, but this and this that you're not doing well, it's so detrimental that it might lead to us not being able to work together, so can we work on it? And here's how I can help, and here's how you can help. That combo just didn't happen before. You know, it would come out and like, I'd walk by Johnny and be like, hey Johnny, like, you know, get your game up brother, haha. Like, you know, I would do these little things and if I was close to you, I would razz you. Like, I would try to communicate through like a joke or a razz that was heavily, you know, dipped in honey and sugar so it wouldn't hurt. I was just being around the bush. And so now it's like, what does it look like? Even having the combo, just even having it. And the reason I'm 5 out of 10 is even when I'm having them now, I gotta really like get there to like be like, oh no, you gotta shoot it straight. Because it's in me to be around the bush in that scenario. And I'm really, really practicing on going right at it. And it's really been helpful.